Have you ever wondered how actors cry on command? Or are you an actor who has been looking to find a system that finally works? Or are you a crew member who's just wondering why the actors are given so much attention on set? By the end of this video, you'll know all of the actors' techniques and tricks on how to cry on cue. You'll also learn the proper crew etiquette on set for actors before an emotional scene. Hi, my name is Alexei Kurvich, and I'm a writer, director, actor out of Austin, Texas. And I've worked in the film industry for the past 10 years. Back when I studied theater in college, I always been amazed at actors who were just able to turn on a switch and cry on command. For me, it was just like a magic trick that I didn't know the secret to. And later, when I was acting professionally in Chicago and studying Meisner, I finally learned a technique that had me sobbing in a scene exercise. I remember walking out of class and thinking that now I'm ready to cry on set. But quickly I learned that it wasn't the case, and that you need a variety of tools that work specifically for you. And they need to work on a consistent basis, because sometimes you'll have the time and space to do an emotional prep and it'll wrap you just after 2 takes. And sometimes you'll need to do 7-8 takes in a small room filled with talking extras and crew with only 20 minutes to get the shot before you need to wrap out of the location. In this video, I'll break down 3 scenes out of the films that I acted in and how I was able to cry. I'll go over the context of the scene and the character, the set conditions on the day, and a technique or a combination of techniques that I use to allow me to cry in the scene. And quick disclaimer, I'm sharing only what has worked for me, and I'm hoping that it can help you, but you should do your own research and figure out what works for you specifically. The first scene is out of the film called I Want to Disappear, directed by Parker Foster. The link to the film is in the description. In the film, I play Connor Lacey, an artist out of New York who has been dating his girlfriend for a while, but still craves the attention of other women, and he can't stop himself in time before it's too late. This is the final scene in the film. His girlfriend found out he's cheating on her and left. She left him a letter, and he's coming home thinking that she still might be there. So let's check out the first scene. So let's talk about the shooting context. As far as shooting, this was an ideal location because this was the final scene of the film. We had about 40 minutes to an hour to shoot it. The crew was minimal, only about 4 or 5 people. And the location where we're shooting was big enough for me to go hide and emotionally prep. So when I have the physical and mental space like that, I usually use the combination of Stanislavski's The Power What If technique and method acting. The Power What If is a concept derived from Stanislavski's system. It's aimed at helping actors imagine themselves in the circumstances of their character. So instead of relying on literal or personal experiences, actors ask themselves, what if I was in this situation? And this imaginative exercise really helps them to create believable responses to fictional scenarios. Now, method acting often gets a bad rep, but when done right, and when done with care and boundaries, it can be a very powerful and healthy tool for actors. So what is method acting? Method acting is a set of techniques that seeks to encourage sincere and expressive performances through understanding and experiencing a character's inner motivation and emotions. Now, what does all this mean and how do you use it? Right before the crew began setting up the lights, the director DP and I blocked the scene. I asked the director, how much time do I have before the camera's going to be up? He told me it's going to be about 20-25 minutes. So I told them to get me when they were ready, and I gave myself about 10 minutes to relax, grab some food and water, etc. And then I went outside of the apartment to prep. For the emotional scenes, I usually try to find a quiet space in the area where we're shooting, where there's no people, no crew, and where I can focus and emotionally prepare for the scene. And during this time, I usually like to start an internal character monologue to put myself in the character's shoes. For this character, I began saying to myself, please, please, please still be there. I hope you're there. I thought about how I would try to apologize and fix the situation. And I told myself, like, look, I fucked up, but I know we can still fix this. I started to also have self-deprecating thoughts and say to myself, what did you do? You messed this whole thing up. So as I'm having this internal monologue, I'm also allowing my body to do what it naturally wants to do. Like, I paced up and down the hall. I came up to the door. I almost opened it, but I didn't. I crouched down on my knees and the feet. You really want to allow your body to have these natural reactions and allow yourself to bottle up these emotions and then in the scene, let them go. Finally, after doing this for about 10-15 minutes, Parker, the director, came to get me. We quickly went over the blocking while I was trying to keep the emotions still bottled up inside of me. So what I told him is to knock on the door, let me know when the camera is rolling. And I was going to enter within a few moments after that. So after a few minutes, the director knocked at the door and I knew this was game time. And now I used the power of what if. Now the point of this exercise is that you really imagine yourself to be this character. So what you do, you really focus on the details of your surroundings. So I focused on the door and I imagined that this was the door to the apartment of my girlfriend. She may be there, she may not be there. She may be crying there waiting for me. And you really want to take in all of these details and get rid of your thoughts. Get rid of any thoughts in your head and focus on the moment. That's what I did. I bottled up all the emotions, I focused on the moment, and I walked in. When I walked in, I said my character's girlfriend's name a few times, and then I saw the letter on the kitchen counter, and I started getting choked up, and tears began streaming down my face. And then the rest you saw in the scene. So as soon as we cut, I still continued to stay in the emotional state while I talked to director and DP when they were giving me blocking notes. It's really important you do that to stay in it because you need to do more takes. So we did 2 more takes and I was able to perform with the same emotional intensity every time because I did the prep and because I had the physical and emotional space to do the prep. Let's jump to scene number 2. And it's from a film called My Dream, My American Dream, which I wrote and directed last year. And the film follows Misha, a Ukrainian immigrant, as he tries to pursue a successful career in film while working odd jobs to get by and waiting for his wife to immigrate to US. So this is a pivotal scene in the film where the main character finally explodes with emotion from his struggles. He just got shorthanded on a recent job, his wife's immigration process is stagnating, his car just broke down, which cost him a great deal. And all this is happening while he has been pushing relentlessly for a long time without a reward. So stakes are high, and we finally get a moment of release from the character. The scene was shot in my house, and the only crew that were present were my DP and the first AD. And even though there were a lot of space, there were two problems that were preventing me from connecting to the character emotionally. And first of them was the fact that my DP has not worked with actors on emotional scenes and was continually fidgeting with the camera and equipment as I was trying to prep. Pro tip to crew, I'm sure you all have seen Joaquin Phoenix freak out on the set of Joker.
No, just like the constant whispering, just shut the up, dude. I'm trying to find something.
Or Christian Bale freak out on the set of Terminator. And the reason why is because during those moments, the crew were distracting them while they were trying to find a moment of emotional truth and focus to find a connection to the character in the scene. Now imagine that you're a focus puller and you're trying to focus on a 1.2 f-stop and someone is right next to you chewing gum really loudly or opening up candy. Or if you're the first AD trying to reschedule a whole shoot day and a couple of people are sitting next to you just cracking jokes very loudly. It's just hard to focus. Now imagine trying to find a delicate emotion to portray with a big camera in your face and a lot of people standing around you and judging you, and a couple of people are distracting you. It's just hard. So please give your actors some space. A really common set practice is when an emotional scene comes up, the first AD lets the crew know and asks them to not talk to the actors or sometimes even look at them in the eye or not be in their sight line during the scene. And no, it sounds crazy, but it really helps the actors give the performance needed in the scene. So thankfully, the first AD was also a director as well, and she let the DP know to give me some space and quiet. Now, the second problem was that I wasn't able to access the emotion then when I needed it. And sometimes that happens. Emotions are a very unpredictable thing, and sometimes you can access them right away, and sometimes you just can't, and they're not there. So what do? So since the character in the story was very close to me, I decided to use the emotional recall technique. It's a process of recalling a personal memory similar to that of a character in a particular scene. I use that in conjunction with the internal monologue technique, just as I did in the previous scene we discussed. So how did all of that work? I let my DP and the first AD know that I needed 5 minutes to prepare in the bathroom while they set the camera. Now, when I was in the bathroom, I recalled the same events that happened to me earlier that year that this story was based on. My car did break down and cost $500 to fix. I was shorthanded $200 on a photography gig, and the USCIS weren't communicating about my wife's Sierra 1 visa case. I was very frustrated, and I remembered having a mental breakdown one night. So now when I was in the bathroom, I remembered that mental breakdown, and I remembered exactly how I felt. So the key to this technique is remembering the physical body state that you experienced. So for example, during the mental breakdown, my shoulders were really slouched. My hands were limp. My gaze didn't really have a point. I was just looking in the distance with a blank stare. So what I did was I combined those physical feelings with the internal monologue in my head. The character was feeling defeated while trying to achieve so much. And the words that I said to myself were, when is it going to finally happen for you? You've been doing this for so long and everything has just gone to you just can't do it. I constantly pushed myself to have that feeling of defeat, physically through emotional recall and mentally with the internal monologue. When I was ready, I came out of the bathroom and let my DP know to roll the camera, and I did the scene. Now, first take was good, but I didn't quite get there emotionally. Now, thankfully, the first AD was also a director, as I mentioned before, and she really helped me to externalize the internal monologue when I was preparing for the scene. It's really important for directors to be able to gently push the actors in the direction of the character. So what she did was she asked me the questions about the character. She asked me, how do you feel? You know, this just keeps happening to you. It just sucks, doesn't it? You've just been working so hard and you just can't catch a break. And she continued asking me those questions, and I began to fill up with emotion. So we did 2 more takes, and the second take is the one that you see in the film. The last scene is another scene from I Want to Disappear. In it, my character Connor is giving a speech at a fundraising event in his name after receiving a phone call from his girlfriend who just found out about his infidelity.
Now, I met Connor 10 years ago when he was an aspiring young teenager driven to create art with a passion for it. But what really stood out was the intent to help others less fortunate than himself. And here we are today with the resources that have been gathered through Connor's efforts, and they're going to be helping underprivileged children who would have had no opportunity to enjoy the process of making art. So Connor, it's your thoughtfulness towards others and always wanting to do the right thing that just brings us here to celebrate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for coming. I'm sorry, but just have a good evening. Thank you so much. This scene was shot in a photo studio in New York. We had about 10 to 15 extras present in the scene along with my co-star. And this was the last scene of the day, and we only had about 20 to 30 minutes to shoot it. Parker, the director, wanted to keep the extras conversing and start the scene as it would actually start without giving them a heads up or an action. My co-star was just going to introduce my character, and I was going to come up on the stage and attempt to give my speech. In a studio full of talking extras, I didn't really have the physical or mental space to do a proper emotional prep. So I utilized 4 different techniques to get me where I needed to be. So what happened was the DP gave me a mark for when we were going to start shooting, and I went off to prep on the side. I shut my ears with my hands, and I shut my eyes, and I started to breathe and try to relax and find my focus. And after a few moments, I also began my internal character monologue, as well as the emotional recall of a similar time when I let somebody down. So finally, right when they called me, I took a moment and I utilized the last technique, which is rubbing your eyes. And it's kind of like their last resort technique that actors use when they don't really have the space or the ability to access their emotions. So when you rub your eyes for about 20 seconds and you open them really wide, they begin to swell up with tear fluid from irritation. And if you keep them open for long enough without blinking, you actually start to tear up. So that's what I did as I walked up the stage. And I continued to go through my internal character monologue as well as that. So as the director motioned me to the stage, the scene began. I walked up and my co-star began to introduce my character and started giving him praise, what a wonderful artist and the person he is. So I began listening and focusing on the technique of the power of what if. I started to really be in the moment and get out of my thoughts. I started to notice the faces of the extras who were looking up to me and remembering that I just had this phone call with my girlfriend who I betrayed. And the emotions started to finally get there because I was in the scene, it was happening right then, there was no distractions. I also continued going through my internal character monologue, and I was saying to myself, look at all these people. They trust you and they respect you, and for what? You're a fraud. As I progressively began saying these things to myself, my emotions intensified, and from technical emotions of crying, I went to real emotions of tearing up. It's interesting how sometimes in order to get to a really truthful place, you need to utilize so many things, so many different techniques. So today we'll learn 5 different techniques to make you be able to cry in cue. The power of what if, method acting, internal monologue, emotional recall, and eye rubbing. Now, emotional scenes can be very difficult for an actor, and you don't always have the physical or emotional space to get there. So you need to have a full arsenal of tools you can deploy to consistently deliver the right performance for your character. We also learned the proper set etiquette for crew when actors are preparing for an emotional scene. You need to give them space and a quiet moment to concentrate. Not talking to them or looking them in the eye is a good practice so an actor can achieve the performance needed for the scene. I hope this has been helpful to you. And that's a wrap. I will see you in the next one.